What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Normally, wouldn't be too excited about a 5-game slate. The GPPs would be what they normally are. However, with the NBA Cup ending last night, or whatever they call it, no NBA tonight. They have a big 888 on DraftKings, a nice $20 on DraftKings as well. FanDuel might have contests. I don't know. Do you want to give a shout out to I forgot his name, but I should remember it because he wins every goddamn night. BMAC 5888 shipping the energy line last night for 25 grand, running the old flow chart special there with Winnipeg won, got the line A hat trick at 4%, got the shutout from Olmark. That's a great lineup. Congrats to you. Going to assume your run good is going to continue tonight, and we'll be leading off tomorrow's show talking about how you won $250,000. If it's not you, I hope it's me, but congrats to you. That's a great lineup. The heaters stay hot, so they say.
Yeah, that 4% line A hat trick, real nice to get that in. I think line A even got the shot bonus there. Olmark rounding things out with the shutout against Seattle. I think that's the fourth time in the last 3 weeks that he's hit for 25K. It's just been an unbelievable heater for BMAC. So congrats. Let's hope he can keep that rolling here tonight because there are some really big, really nice contests on DraftKings. I didn't do so hot last night. I had Washington. We were talking before the show. Washington just completely fell on their face, especially in the second half of the game against Chicago. Nice little 5-gamer here tonight. There's one pretty lopsided matchup, but and it's Winnipeg going into Anaheim, we'll get to that. But given that Winnipeg is a road back-to-back and it's almost certainly going to be Eric Comrie starting, it's not the most impossible spot for Anaheim. So 5-game slate, 10 teams on the board. There's actually 10 teams we're talking about, which isn't always the case because sometimes there are teams that or games that you can probably just look past. Sometimes even on a short slate like this, but I don't think that's the case today. Yeah,
Winnipeg has the highest total on the board at 3.3, and that's low for the highest total on the board. Everyone is sandwiched between 2.6 and 3.3 today. There's not going to be an overly chalky spot. This is an interesting slate from a news perspective. Dallas, the flu bug is running through their locker room. The coach said they had a lot of game time decisions. Of course, it's on a day that there's no NBA and all the NBA guys are coming over and they're going to have to deal with that stuff. They're used to it because you guys are savages, and I don't know how you deal with grinding NBA every night with all that injury news. I used to do it, and then I had kids, and there's just not enough time in the day. But this should be a pretty good slate here. Interesting to break it down. Ideally for these huge GPPs, you're kind of hoping for at least 6 games. 5 is a little tricky to navigate. You still hope there's a couple paths to victory. On this slate, I think there will be, unless you have one of these 18% lines just absolutely just blow the cover off. But let's talk about it. Let's get into the slate. Before we do, just want to extend a thank you to all of you guys for just hanging out with us, supporting us through all the shows, just being here, liking the show, liking the YouTube show, whatever, even if you have bad things to say about us, at least you're here and at least you're voicing those opinions. But if you do want to go premium, and we never force you to go premium, my dogs might hold you at gunpoint to go premium, but they're quiet today. But you can click the link in the chat. You can use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription, any sport. So check that out. We do appreciate your support. let's hop into this 5-gamer. Philadelphia Flyers with a 3 total heading into Detroit. The Wings have a 3 total. Wings going Larkin, Raymond, Tarasenko, DeBrincat, Kane, Kopp, Confer, Rasmussen, Mott. All right. Flyers going Konechny, Couturier, Farabee, Mitchkov, Tippett, Frost, Brink, Forrester, Cates. These have been the line. These have been the lines for a few weeks now. Yeah. Don't let Bacon hear that. He'll come up and, try to murder me on live TV here. But I'm surprised that Torts has kept these Flyers lines together for as long as they have. Maybe he found something in them. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the GM's like, just give it some time. But either way, starting the Detroit side, that top line of Larkin, Raymond, Tarasenko, 15,900, 12.2% top 2 stacks, 17.2% projected ownership. There are, I think, 6 or 7 lines, 15% and above here tonight projected. Detroit 1 is one of them. I don't particularly love it. I like Larkin and Raymond. They have very good numbers together. But Tarasenko at this point in his career is just kind of a guy. He's a good skater, but that's really about it. He has a decent shot, but he's not the guy he was 4 or 5 years ago. That Flyers top line, the matchup they're going to see, Couturier, Konechny, Farabee, they're not world beaters defensively, but they're not bad by any means. Flyers have their best, quote-unquote, best goalie going, Sam Ersson. He's at least NHL caliber compared to the other two. I get it for Detroit 1. I just, if they were fully correlated or was DeBrincat or Kane up there instead of Tarasenko, then it might be a different conversation. But I don't particularly love a 17% line with Vladimir Tarasenko on it. Same with the second line. They're coming in with 10% projected ownership. Andrew Kopp as a second line center in the year 2024, almost 2025, just doesn't compute with my brain. They're 13,300, so that price is a little bit more, doable. I think if I would do it's not a great power play matchup, but again, the Flyers goaltending has had issues. So if anything, I do Larkin, Raymond, leave Tarasenko off and added DeBrincat or Kane in. But I don't think I would prioritize them in single entry. That's more of an MMA type deal. I do have more interest in the Flyers side, and the top line of Konechny, Couturier, Farabee, 15,400, 10.1% top 2 stack, 12.4% projected ownership. It's fine. They haven't been great. Konechny as a one-off is always in play for me. I just, Farabee is cheap enough where if he hits the score sheet, has a couple shots, a block or whatever, he'll hit value. It's Couturier that I'm kind of having issues with. I think, if I'm going to use the Flyers top line, it would just be a Konechny one-off. Now, this is a good power play matchup, so I guess I would be fine with the Flyers top line. The Flyers second line and third lines are more interesting to me. The second line of Mitchkov, Tippett, Frost, 14,500, 5% top 2 stack, 3.6% projected ownership. There's a couple reasons why I like them better. One, they have been better at 5-on-5. They're just a better 5-on-5 line. Two, they're going to avoid the Edvinsson-Seider pairing. And once you get past them, it's just awful. The middle six of Detroit is just terrible. You also get Mitchkov on the top power play. I do like that second line. I do worry that it's only Mitchkov on the top power play unit. So if you want to leave, Frost off and add in Konechny, that's fine. The third line, I think I would reserve for if I was power play stacking or using Toronto. Bobby Brink is fine as a one-off since he's on the top power play. A two-man of Cates Brink or Cates Forrest or something like that is fine. So my favorite line in this game is honestly Philadelphia's second line. I think doing some sort of Flyers power play stack works. I don't mind Detroit. I just don't think I'm going to get there in single entry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just in a nutshell, you'd want Alex DeBrincat on the top line over Vladimir Tarasenko if you're playing DFS, just all things equal. One thing do think about Tarasenko though is you're right. He's not the player he was, 4 years ago, let alone 6-7 years ago. Like his shot rate has gone down quite a bit. Like it was 50% higher like 6 years ago. You know what I mean? Like he's just not the shooter that he was. He's not a bad playmaker, right? I think there's something to be said about that, considering Dylan Larkin has struggled to score at times, especially at even strength this season. Lucas Raymond basically wasn't scoring for like the first 20 games of the season. He's been a lot better over the last few weeks. Like having a legitimate playmaker up there, and I think Tarasenko is. Like I was looking at some of the tracking data, like high danger passes and slot passes and stuff like that, and they're all pretty good for him this year. Over the last 2 years, season and a half, Tarasenko's primary assist rate at 5-on-5, which if you're an NBA player watching or not super familiar with NHL, like typically primary assist rates are important. It's what you look at for forwards to see who's really the playmaker setting up the goal scorer. It's basically been a first line rate over the last season and a half at 5-on-5. He doesn't put up a lot of goals anymore. He doesn't put up a lot of shots. And because he doesn't get a lot of ice time, the point totals themselves won't be big, but I think he can actually help out that top line. The ownership is high. 17.2% is high. Don't get me wrong. That is pretty high. The thing is like there may not be a line on this slate that reaches 20%, and it's a 5-game slate. So like there's nowheres that's super chalky. And like Sam Ersson, he might be the best of the 3 Flyers goalies. But that, like, how much does that really say? You know what I mean? It's like saying you're the tallest of 3 brothers and you're 5'7". It's like, okay, yeah, you're tall, but you're still undersized. You know what I mean? Ersson's not been good this year. He basically hasn't been good for about a calendar year now, maybe 10 months or whatever. Like, I'm not super concerned about the goaltending. The only thing that worries me is that Philly top line has been solid defensively. Even the second line's been kind of fine defensively in secondary matchups. So that would kind of push me off. But like, if I'm playing a couple mid-price stacks here tonight, honestly, there's only a handful that I'd really play, like 3 or 4. And Detroit 1 is certainly one of them. I do think Tarasenko, he might not have a big game. He's also only 3,200. He's one of those guys, like we always talk about, if you can get an assist and a few shots, like you're fine. If you can get a couple assists, you're laughing. So I honestly don't mind Detroit 1 here. They're the only line that I probably would play. What I do find interesting about Detroit 2, they did have Andrew Kopp rotating with Michael Rasmussen on the power play yesterday, the second power play unit. If Kopp is there, Detroit 2 would be perfectly correlated. Now, I don't imagine the power play would be very good, but perfect correlation on a 5-game slate for a line that is, 13,300 would be pretty reasonable for me. So I think Detroit 2 can be in play. I would much rather just pay the extra 2,600, go play Detroit 1. I honestly don't mind the Detroit side here tonight. I'm not so stoked about playing their depth. There's a super expensive Toronto line we'll get to later. If you want 2-man Compher and Rasmussen or Mott and Rasmussen, something like that, it's fine. But it's not one of the depth lines that I'm targeting. On the Philly side, I think I do agree with you about Mitchkov, Tippett, and Frost. They have been pretty good offensively, 2.7 expected goals, 4.5 actual goals. That's shooting 16.8%. But Mitchkov, I think he's already shown he's a pretty good playmaker. So they won't shoot 17%, but can they shoot like 10 to 11% over the long haul for the rest of the season? Like, I think they can. So I'm kind of with you. I don't mind Mitchkov, Frost, and Tippett. I would always be hesitant to stack the Flyers and leave off Travis Konechny. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. It's like stacking Tampa Bay and leaving off Kucherov. Like, Kucherov is a much better player offensively than Konechny, but just in importance to the team and how many points that they actually get and goals and all that. So, if you want to, I think you can leave off Tippett and put on Konechny and just go like Mitchkov, Frost, Konechny, because it is a good power play matchup. for Philly, even though the Philly power play isn't very good. But I agree with you in a nutshell. Philly 2 would be my preference over Philly 1. Philly 3 is interesting because Brink, Forster, and Cates have legitimately been very good together this season. Now, it's only 90 minutes, so we're talking like 8-9 games worth of ice time. But 3.4 expected goals for 1.7 against in their 90 minutes together, 4 actual goals per 60. As you mentioned, Brink is on the top power play unit. There are super expensive, like Florida, especially Toronto lines that you might need a really cheap third line here tonight. I think Philly 3 is one that I would at least consider. But it's Detroit 1 and Philly 2 I would have most interest from in this game.
Yep. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 2.8 total heading into Dallas. The Stars have a 3.1. There are a lot of game time decisions. I don't know what the coach said a lot, but he said there's a few game time decisions for the Stars with the flu bug running through the locker room. I know Harley was the one important guy who missed the other day. I think Nils Lundqvist was the other guy. They didn't skate yesterday. They're at the arena. I would assume those two are definitely game time decisions, but there's probably other ones as well. That's kind of a problem because Johnson, Hintz, Robertson, 16,500 is a line I would be interested in playing. We just don't know if they're going to be a line. Maybe one of them is a game time decision. Maybe somewhere else is a game time decision where they have to move like Johnston down with Ben. You know what I mean? So like we just don't know the Dallas lineup. Assuming everybody is in, I would have some interest in Johnson, Hintz, Robertson at 16.5. Like it's a little weird that the Toronto is loading up Matthews, Nylander, and Marner. I would imagine they're going to be very, very good at both ends of the ice. So it's kind of hard to break down what I want to do with Dallas until I really, really know what the lines are going to be.
And just to jump in quickly, I also should mention Dallas played on Monday night and won 3-1, and they put Maverick Bork up with with Hintz and Robertson for the entire third period, and they scored. So maybe it could even be Maverick Bork on the top line, even if everyone's healthy.
Yeah, because they moved Johnson down to play with Ben. So like different lines in the third period from what they started. They didn't practice. You know what I mean? They have game time decisions. Like Johnson, Hintz, if it's them going into the Matthews line, it does worry me a little bit, but their minutes have been up and they've started playing better. Like Duchesne, Marchment, Stankoven, 15-8 avoiding that Matthews line. I know Tavares and Nyes have a decent sample in their limited time together, but I can't imagine with Pacioretty that line being great defensively. I would imagine they'd be slow paced, but Duchesne, Marchment, and Stankoven are so high paced that I think they could have the run of the play there. What also interests me is this is a pretty good power play matchup for Dallas. And they've been pushing their top power play unit a bit more. Like at the beginning of the season, they were kind of 55-45. It's pushing more towards the top unit. That would lead me to play Johnson, Hintz, Robinson. But again, don't know if they're game time decisions. Don't know if Maverick Bork moves up. So it's kind of really hard to pinpoint what I do on Dallas. Toronto, it's a little different story. It's really the top line or bust, and 25,800 might be the most expensive line we've had to break down this season. And it's a pretty bad matchup, assuming everyone's in for Dallas. Their small sample together this season, though, has been ridiculous. So, it's a 5-game slate. If this is an 11-game slate, I'd be like, nah, I'm not spending over 50% of my cap on this Toronto line in this matchup. But this being a 5-game slate and them coming in at 5.2% projected ownership with, definite question marks coming back. I know it's Ottinger starting, but he's started 7 straight games. They could be a bit compromised. I think you have to consider Toronto 1 here. We just talked about that Flyers third line. They fit with them. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's other ones. Like, I guess you could leave Marner off and put in Riley or something like that, but like, because it's a 5-game slate, I think you got to consider them. Tavares, Nyes, Pacioretty, like I don't particularly love. I'd rather just go play Duchesne, Marchman, Stankoven for $100 less. So it really would be Toronto 1, and Dallas is just, you have to see what they are at warmups, like, because how do we know?
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. Is like, even if mostly everybody is healthy, we could get to warm up, and the top line is Hintz, Robertson, and Bork, right? Which, there is between Johnston and Bork, there is a $3,100 price difference. So then you probably have to change around a defenseman or swap a line if it's a later line. Like, until we get clarity, it's just hard to say. What I will say is that in general, I kind of like Dallas 1 here if it is Hintz, Robertson, and Johnston. The reason is the power play, as you mentioned. The big note is that it's not necessarily just the ice time, it's the scoring, right? Dallas's first, I think it's 16 games of the season, the top power play unit I have was shooting 4.2%, which, like, triple that would probably be low for that top power play unit for how they've performed in prior seasons and all the shots that they were generating. Over the last 15 games, that is up to 18%, which is about where you would expect them. You would expect them at the top end of the league at like 17, 18%. They're scoring 10.5 goals per 60 minutes. They've legitimately turned into not like a super elite like Tampa Bay power play, but at the top of the next tier below that, which is a big, big change for the DFS outlook of that line, because they just weren't, like, I think Miro Heiskanen, who's been a staple of the top power play unit basically all season, has 3 power play points this year, which just, it's like we're 2.5 months into the season. So the power play just being a lot better, I think, matters a lot, because Toronto's been one of the most penalized teams in the league. That's something that, you and I talk about when they're on the slate, but that I don't hear about very often. If you want to look at the full season, Toronto is the 3rd most penalized team in the NHL, behind Montreal and Utah. And if you look at just the last 31 days, they're the 5th most penalized team. And 2nd most of any team on the slate. So, like, Toronto does take a lot of penalties. So the Dallas power play being a lot better matters. I think both top 2 lines, assuming they're together, are perfectly fine. I would probably just defer to the Johnston, Hintz, Robertson line. As you mentioned, they've been getting more ice time. They've been 17 minutes on the low end for Robertson and Hintz. Johnston up at 20 minutes with some regularity. They've started scoring a bit at 5-on-5, but the power play has just been so much better that it makes a really, really big difference, especially where Dallas has been drawing more power plays as the season's been going on. They've been above average in that regard over the last, 5 weeks. So not a bad power play matchup for Dallas 1. They finally righted that ship. I really do like the Johnston, Hintz, Robertson line, but we'll have to see when warmups roll around, because that line very well could not be together. So just make sure to, if you're a Stochastic member, check the Discord. If you're not, check Twitter. But it is very important. On the Toronto side, I'm going to be honest. Like, yes, it is, because it is only a 5-game slate. You have to consider Toronto 1. I feel pretty fine fading them. And I didn't really, it's not a decision that's really kind of tearing me apart. Like, Marner, Nylander, and Matthews have played over 100 minutes together over the last 3 years of 5-on-5. expected goals of 3.6 per 60 minutes, actual goals of 3.9 per 60 minutes. That's basically the expected goals and actual goals rate of the Nyes, Marner, Matthews line from this year. Like it's really good. It is borderline elite. It's also about the same as what they were doing with Matthew Nyes there. Only instead of this line being 21K, now they're 25,800. You're basically paying a premium for a name. Like, obviously Nylander is a lot more productive, generally speaking, than Nyes will be, but you're basically paying an extra 4K for the hope of a shot bonus. That's kind of what it comes down to. I just find it's pretty overpriced, considering, generally speaking, how good Dallas is, how good Ottinger has been. Dallas has a really, really good penalty kill. Toronto, that line probably has to get 4 goals here tonight. Like, you're asking a lot from them. I feel fine not playing Toronto 1. I think it's Toronto 2 I genuinely have more interest in. Like, I was looking at the numbers, like Pacioretty and Tavares, regardless of who their winger has been, have been really, really good this year. They were good with Nylander. They were good with Marner. They were good with Bobby McMahon. They've also been good without either Marner or Nylander on their line. 4.4 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60 minutes. If Dallas's defense is banged up because, Harley has the flu, Lundqvist has the flu, Dumba's out, like if they're down to basically like 3 NHL defensemen, that line's not going to see very much of Miro Heiskanen, and they're going to see a lot of AHLers and depth NHLers. I kind of like that Toronto second line here, at least the 2-man of like Tavares and Pacioretty. I think Pacioretty makes a pretty fine one-off at 3,800 as well. I like Toronto 2 on the Toronto side the best, considering they're $10,000 cheaper. But I think my favorite line in this game is Dallas 1, assuming Johnston's on the top line.
Yeah, and I see someone said RotorWire has Hintz confirmed on Power Play 2. He was on Power Play 1 last game, and they haven't practiced special teams since. So pretty sure RotorWire is wrong there. Before we get to the next game, got $150 super chat from Wally Balls. You are nuts. He says, boys, thank you for the shout out earlier and all the great work you do. Let's get it tonight. BMAC. I don't know what to say to that, man. You're on a otherworldly heater across at least three different sports. I don't know if we're helping you more than you're helping us. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we always say we try to give the best advice we can. It's still up to the people to click the names into the lineup. So the congrats goes to you. Just like one of the craziest, like one of the best heaters, one of the best runs that you'll ever see in DFS. But thanks a lot for the $150 super chat. Hopefully we can help you out just a little bit more here tonight.
Yep. Florida Panthers with a 3 total. Heading into Minnesota, the Wild have a 2.6 total. Sam Bennett confirmed out. Florida going Barkov, Kachuk, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, Lundell, Luster-Reinen, Erod, Bachwist, Samokiewicz. Minnesota going Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, Boldy, Hartman, Johansson. This is a game where if it was a bigger slate, I'd be like, oh man, like this is brutal. Like this is 2 really good defensive teams. Now, Barkov, Kachuk, Verhaeghe, 21,800. They have the highest top 2 stack percentage of the night at 27.4%, 15.5% projected ownership. There's a couple of things in their favor, I guess you could say. One, Joel Eriksson Ek is out, and they're going to be facing Rossi, Zuccarello, Kaprizov instead of a Joel Eriksson Ek line. Yeah, Brodin's back, and that certainly helps them on the blue line. Same with Spurgeon. But their penalty kill still sucks. I don't think there's a cure. There's been like 4 different coaches. And it's just been terrible with all of them. So I know they're expensive at 21,800, but like you have to imagine they're going to play heavy minutes. Kachuk, this is the first time I think Kachuk's been playing with Barkov this season. I don't know, man. Like, I know Rossi, Zuccarello, Kaprizov have been good, but it's not a Joel Eriksson X center coming back at them. I think I would much rather play Florida 1 at 21-8 than Toronto 1 at 25-8, and it's not particularly close. Like, I know the Wild don't take a ton of penalties, but like their penalty kill is atrocious. For how good they are defensively at 5-on-5, it makes absolutely no sense that they cannot stop a puck on the penalty kill. On top of that, it's Marc-Andre Fleury in net, who is not Philip Gustafsson. Yeah, Marc-Andre Fleury is a Hall of Famer, but he hasn't really been the same Marc-Andre Fleury since really the first season he came to Minnesota, which was a while ago. I do have interest in Florida 1 here. Florida 2 is a bit interesting because they're only 14,700, but like that Hartman Johansson line has been a meat grinder defensively. So like, I guess a Reinhart one-off would be fine because he just shoots 97% on the power play. It's a little bit hyperbolic, but it's close. I don't mind them because like Lundell and Luosterainen historically have been very good together. You throw Reinhart into the mix at 14-7, I think it's fine. But, you know, on the Florida side, it really is Florida 1. On the Minnesota side, I think they're kind of interesting too because it is Bobrovsky in net. And yes, he won them a Stanley Cup last year, but he has not been very good this year. Bob kind of goes good season, bad season, good season, bad season. We're in the middle of a bad season here. Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, like they haven't blown anyone away offensively. I would have been more interested if it was Boldy on that top line. But, you know, at 19-1, like Barkov and Verhaeghe have ridiculously good numbers at both ends of the ice together. You throw Kachuk into the mix. Like, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, but like it is Bobrovsky. I think you can take some chances on Minnesota 1 here. Minnesota 2, like, yes, they're really good defensively, Hartman and Johansson, but they're really, really not great offensively. I think it would be a Boldy one-off for me. So, like, both top lines in this game, and I definitely prefer Florida 1. I don't think you just should X out Minnesota 1. It is Bob and net, and it's a short slate, so you have to consider Minnesota 1.
Yeah, I think it's gone kind of underreported just how bad Bobrovsky has been this year, because it's not like he's like a little below average or something like that. I was looking at goals saved above expected from Evolving Hockey. Of the 32 regular starting goalies in the NHL, by goals saved above expected per 60 minutes, Bobrovsky is 30th. He's between Alex Georgiev and Dan Vladar.
That's not the company you want to be keeping.
No, he's been awful. Now, Florida is typically a pretty good defensive team, which is why, you know, they can still win games and kind of limit the damage against. They don't allow a ton of shots. So even though he's been abysmal, he's allowing fewer than 3 goals per game. Like, that kind of matters, right? But, you know, this isn't Sergei Bobrovsky of the 2024 playoffs or whatever. This is the Sergei Bobrovsky, like you said, we've been seeing every other year for the last decade. I do kind of like Minnesota 1 here for that reason. 19,100, like they're not priced up like Florida, certainly nowhere near Toronto. They are perfectly correlated on the power play. At 19,100, like if you can get like 2 correlated goals and a shot bonus or something like that, or, you know, maybe Kaprizov gets the 3-point bonus and Rossi gets a couple of assists and a shot bonus, like that type of thing. Like, you don't need this line to go absolutely nuclear to pay off 19,100. You know, with them perfectly correlated, with Bobrovsky struggling like he is, like I kind of do like that Minnesota line. You know, there's like 4 expensive lines here tonight that you'd have to pick between. If I'm not going to Florida, that knocks it down to 3, or to Toronto, sorry, it knocks it down to 3, Florida, Winnipeg, and Minnesota. The thing is I would probably put Minnesota third on that list, right? Like, I think I agree with you. I'd rather play the Florida side here in this game, and then later on, I'd probably just rather go back to Winnipeg 1. So, while I don't mind Minnesota in a nutshell, they're projecting well. They're not getting a lot of ownership, all that stuff. I just think in that 19, 21 to 22K price range, or just 19K and above, they're not my favorite line in that price range. As far as the depth for Minnesota, like, I really don't have a lot of interest. Like, if you want to dip down to like the third line because you are playing Toronto or something like that, like, I think that's okay. But like you said, Hartman and Boldy haven't been really that good this year. 1.5 expected goals, 0.9 actual goals per 60 in about 60 minutes together. I think it's just a pass for me. If I'm playing Florida here tonight, I'm playing the top line. Or Minnesota, sorry. I'm playing the top line. It's probably the same thing for Florida. You're right that Barkov and Kachuk haven't played much together this year. This line did play together quite a bit a couple years ago. So I was looking at how the line has done over the last 2.5 seasons. It is preposterous how good this Florida top line has been at 5-on-5. Like, absolutely insane. In 235 minutes together, 4.8 expected goals per 60 minutes, 5.6 actual goals per 60 minutes. I swear to God, that's better than the Flyers power play.
Oh, easily.
No, like, it actually is.
Oh, yeah, no, I believe you.
Flyers top power play unit, I think, is at like 5.3 goals per 60 this season at 5-on-4. At 5-on-5, this Florida line over the last 2.5 years is better than that. It is a bad matchup. Even with Eriksson Ek out, the top line is still good defensively. The blue line is one of the best in the NHL. I think the other difference is there's no Gustafsson in net, right? It's Marc-Andre Fleury. And Fleury is a step down from Gustafsson. At least he has been so far this season. Fleury it's nearly -4 goals saved above expected in 9 games. Like, he's costing the team basically a goal like every 5 periods.
It's like half a goal a game, basically.
Yeah, it's not been good, man. So I think it's one of those games where I think Florida can get there even on like 22 shots. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a game where they need to put up 37 shots to hope to get to 5 goals. I think they can score like 17 out of 22 or 5 out of 22 or something like that. So I think my favorite line in this game is Minnesota 1 or Florida. Geez, I keep mixing them up. Is Florida 1, and then it would be Minnesota 1. This is not a game where I'm really that enamored with the depth. I think, I talked about the Toronto second line earlier. I don't mind them. The Philly third line was one of those super cheap lines I didn't mind. I think in Florida, Minnesota, I would be looking at either of the top lines or in a single entry. Obviously, if you're playing a ton of lineups, that's different. But in single entry, it would probably be one of the top lines, or I'd just move along.
Yeah, and you can't discount how bad the Wild penalty kill is. I don't even understand. It needs to be studied. Winnipeg Jets with a 3.3 total heading into Anaheim. The Ducks have a 2.7 total. The Winnipeg Jets handled the Sharks pretty easily last night. It is back-to-back on the road, but that top line played depressed minutes because it was in hand. Velarde only played 17 minutes. Connor played 18. Scheifele played 19. They've been playing over 20 pretty consistently, so they got a few minutes off there. It's not like they played 26 minutes last night like McKinnon would sometimes and have to, really like get some IV fluids to get amped up for tonight. It is another really, really good power play matchup for Winnipeg 1 here. Connor Scheifele, Velarde, 20,200, 23.5% top 2 stack, 17.6% projected ownership. They have the highest total on the night. Arguably the best power play spot on the night, just from the sheer volume of penalties the Ducks take and the fact that they can't kill a penalty. I mean, like, the Wild penalty kill might be worse, but they don't take as many penalties as the Ducks. So I think Winnipeg 1's in the best power play spot on the night. In the game yesterday, Alex Alifalo moved up to the second line. They obviously won't skate today. We won't know until warmups. So if you are interested in Winnipeg too, you got to stay up late to see warmups. Congrats. Most people do anyway. I'm just really old and need my beauty sleep. So I will not be one of those people. I am very interested in Winnipeg 1 here. I think going back to them makes some perfect sense. I know the flow chart says in a good matchup, you fade them, but it flowed last night. If the Ducks are going to give them 4 or 5 penalty or power plays, they're going to take advantage of it like they did last night. So I'm very much in on Winnipeg 1. The depth, if you're interested, because they are under 10K, I would imagine Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton stays together, so that's easy enough if you need a depth line there. But if you are interested in parts of the second line, I would just make sure that, Alex Alifalo is up there and not. You just got to wait until warmups. The Duck side is interesting because 1, back on the road for Winnipeg. 2, it's Eric Comrie in net, not Connor Hellebuyck, and the Jets aren't a very, very good team defensively, and they have a suspect penalty kill. The reason their penalty kill is anything worth a damn is because of Connor Hellebuyck. I do have interest in Vetrano, Terry Strome here. They are fully correlated on one of the units at 16,000. They have been their best line at 5-on-5 this season. They're coming in right around their top 2 stack percentage at 9.6% projected ownership. I think they are perfectly fine here. McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry, under 10K, fully correlated on the other unit, I think is interesting if you are spending up for the I keep doing that. For the Panthers or Toronto, they're 9,900 with 4.5% projected ownership. I think they're interesting, if you are getting really expensive with your other stack. I don't mind Carlson, Killorn either. Like, they have decent numbers together. You get Carlson on the top power play unit, the Terror unit. I just, at that price, I'd rather go to the fully correlated McTavish line. My favorite lines in this game are both top lines, though.
Yeah, I mean, the best line in this game is obviously Winnipeg 1. I was looking to see if they had maybe been on a little bit of a slide lately. We talked about the impact of losing Dylan Sandberg on the blue line. The team got off to a hot start and then cooled off. Over their last 16 games, the Winnipeg top line's at 3.4 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Like, that's not elite, but that's still really good. So they've definitely been scoring. As you mentioned, Velarde on the low end typically will play like 18 and 19 minutes, and then Connor and Scheifele will be like 20 plus. So like they do play a lot of minutes. They play with the empty net. Like they perfectly correlated. Anaheim, definitely not a very good penalty kill. So I do like going back to Winnipeg 1 here. I have no issue with going to them. If you're playing single entry, you do have a decision to make. As I mentioned, there are 4 lines: Toronto, Florida, Winnipeg, Minnesota top lines that are all expensive-ish to varying degrees that you'll have to pick between. I think for me, Winnipeg would probably be second. I think I would go Florida, Winnipeg, Toronto, Minnesota. But Winnipeg's, I think, is still firmly in play. I'm not worried. The only thing I'm honestly worried about is that Anaheim traded Cam Fowler, which is something that might actually improve their blue line. Sorry, Frostback, but this is a team that has struggles on the penalty kill. None of their lines are really that good defensively. Like, the best defensive line is the Carlson line, and they're still below average by expected goals against. Like, it's just not a good defensive team in any respect. So, do like Winnipeg 1. I will say I'm probably out on Winnipeg 2. For me, it's just like even if I follows on the second line, they're super cheap, but I would honestly probably rather go to Winnipeg 3, I think. That third line of Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton often gets second line minutes. Like, the only guy I'd feel comfortable saying is going to play more than that third line tonight is Perfidi, because he gets top power play minutes. And if you look over the last 3 years, because the Winnipeg top line is used in a shutdown role when they're at home. Obviously, they're not used that way when they're on the road. The Winnipeg third line, their goal rate, their scoring rate goes up 36% when they're on the road compared to when they're at home. They generate, over the last, just this season, I was looking at what they did on the road, 3.1 expected goals, 4.1 actual goals per 60. Like, they've been really, really good on the road when they get away from having to play against top lines and top pairs and stuff like that. So I think Winnipeg 3, Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton, or some two-man of it, Lowry, Niederreiter probably, is one of those lines that I would consider if I was using Toronto here tonight, because they are under 10K. They are a lot better on the road. Matching up against the Anaheim third and fourth lines, like, if all of Anaheim's lines are below average defensively, the third and fourth lines are abysmal defensively, especially that third line. So I think this is a matchup that favors Winnipeg 3. I do like Winnipeg 3 if you're playing Toronto. Other than that, I don't think you really have a need to play them. But Winnipeg 1 favorite on that side. On the Anaheim side, I guess it would be going to the top line, because they are perfectly correlated. They have been fine offensively. Like, they've been above average offensively, which, like, being above average offensively on this Anaheim team at any point in the last 2.5 years is a Christmas miracle. So the fact that they're actually above average offensively at 5-on-5, both by expected goals and actual goals, is a positive for them. They get 18 to 20 minutes. They get that power play time. Not super concerned about any of the matchups on the Winnipeg side, especially with Eric Comrie and net, not Hellebuck. The thing is like, at 16K, like, they're in a price range. Like, if we get confirmation that Dallas 1 is with Wyatt Johnston, I'd probably rather play Dallas 1. I think I'd rather play Detroit 1. Probably rather play Philly 1 even. So, like, I don't mind the Anaheim top line. I just think, unless I'm pairing them with another mid-price line and not pairing them with an expensive Winnipeg or expensive Minnesota or something like that, like, I'm not super stoked about playing Anaheim. If anything, I guess it would be that third line with Gauthier, McTavish, and Fabry, just because they are perfectly correlated. They get lucky once on the power play. They can pay off their price of $9,900, and you can play them with Toronto. I would probably still rather play the Winnipeg third line over the McTavish line if I need a stack to play with Toronto. But I guess Anaheim 3 is fine. But for me, it goes Winnipeg 1, Winnipeg 3, Anaheim 1, Anaheim 3 in this game for me.
Yeah, that's about right. I can make an argument that I would rather play Anaheim 1 over Winnipeg 3, but why would we have that argument? Like that? There's a lot of things I'd rather do than talk about that again. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.7 total heading into Utah. The Soakers have a 2.9 total. It was an optional this morning for Vancouver, and Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, and Quinn Hughes weren't on the ice. I went to go look for an update. We didn't get one. I would assume they're all playing since it was an optional. And, Pettersson had that nagging knee. Besser just came back from an injury. Quinn Hughes' back hurts from carrying the team. So I would imagine that they will all be on the ice tonight. This is an interesting game because, like, Utah has been a good 5-on-5 team. The problem is they don't have a very good penalty kill, and they take a lot of penalties. So if the line is Besser, Miller, Garland, I think that would be my preferred line from Vancouver. 16,200, 8% top two stack, 6.8% projected ownership. Now, sucks that Connor Garland isn't on the top power play unit, but like, they are a very, very good 5-on-5 line regardless. It isn't the best 5-on-5 matchup, whether they see the Hayton line or the Cooley line. Like, they've both been very. Just
real quickly, last game they booted Miller off the power play unit and put Garland back on.
Yeah. Who knows? Like, so at worst, you're going to get 2 of the 3 guys on that line. So, like, I'm fine with it. The 5-on-5 matchup isn't great. Like, the Hayton line has been very good defensively. The Cooley, Genther, McBain line actually has been good defensively. That Krause, Michelli, Bukestad line, good defensively. So, like, the one thing I would say is, like, historically over the past 3 seasons, Miller, Besser, regardless of who they play with, have been very, very good. And you could also argue that Connor Garland has been the Vancouver Canucks' best player this season. So those three guys at 16,200, I am interested in. Pettersson, DeBrusk, whether it's Sasson or that's probably not how you say it, but I wanted to say it because I watched Beauty and the Beast this morning. Or Kiefer Sherwood there coming off a hat trick. They're fine, but like Miller, Besser have been great for seasons. That would be the line I would go to. On the Utah side, Keller, Schmaltz, and Hayton at 14,600 just feels cheap because there have been times in previous seasons that they have been in the low 18s. They're only getting 9% projected ownership. It's not the best matchup, but Utah does dictate matchups. They're at home. So maybe they do avoid the Hughes pairing at some point. And once you get past that, with their injuries on the blue line, there's just nothing there. Yes, it's Demko, and that sucks. But like that line at 14.6 for what they could do, I am interested in. I'm also interested a little bit in the Genther Cooley line. Like Jack McBain doesn't really do shit for me on that line, but Genther and Cooley both on the top power play unit. They have been pretty good together at 5-on-5, so I don't mind Utah 2. I really want to use Utah 3, but they've been terrible together offensively this season. Now, the past few seasons, they've been very, very good for a third line. They're 8,400. I don't mind taking a stab. They're fully correlated on the second unit. They're a line that I'd just throw into the mix with, like the Flyers third line, the Winnipeg third line as a line. I would pair them with Toronto in MME or whatever. But really, it would be the JT Miller line and the Schmaltz line.
Yeah, I do like Miller, Besser, and Garland here because, as you said, regardless of what they do with the power play, 2 out of the 3 guys are going to be on the top power play unit. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Utah has been one of the most penalized teams in the league, up there with Montreal all season. And just over the last 31 days, they're the second most penalized team in the NHL, the most on slate here tonight, and their penalty kill itself isn't very good. I think one reason why you're seeing Miller on the second power play unit is because with DeBrusk and Garland on the power play, it's actually been pretty good, right?
Garland's a good shooter, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and I was looking at the top power play unit shot numbers, like depending what grouping you're looking at, like 66 to 70 shots per 60 minutes. Like that's high. Like a good number would be around 60. They're anywhere from like 10 to 15% better than that. So Utah takes a lot of penalties. They have trouble killing off the ones that they do take. Vancouver power play has been pretty good. You get 2 of the 3 guys on the top power play unit from that Miller, Besser, Garland line. Miller and Besser have been good this year. 3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. It's not great, but it's good. The other thing is, I think it's been a while since we've actually had a show where JT Miller's been playing, maybe one since he returned. But usually when Vancouver's at home, they send out JT Miller with the Quinn Hughes pairing. They do kind of the same thing on the road. I was looking earlier, 58% of JT Miller's minutes at 5-on-5 on the road have been with Quinn Hughes on the ice. He rarely plays with the second and third pairs. So not only do you get a pretty good 5-on-5 line, you get arguably the best defenseman in the NHL right now playing well over half their minutes with them. So I do like Vancouver 1. They are my favorite line in this game. If you want to go to Vancouver 2, like I'm not going to say no. I think they're still trying to figure out that line, which is why you've seen Kiefer Sherwood there. You've seen Nils Hoglander there. Now you're seeing Max Sasson there. So until they figure it out, I don't think I would go there in single entry. It would be the Vancouver top line. Also mention that third line, Suter, Sherwood, Heinen. Sherwood's just had a massive game the last time out. He's also averaging over 2 shots per game. And Sherwood and Heinen as a duo this year, 2.7 expected goals per 60. That's above average. So they're an above average offensive line as a third line. Get decent matchups against Utah's bottom 6. That Vancouver third line would be another one of those lines I would consider if I was playing Toronto here tonight, but it's Vancouver up one I like best. On the Utah side, I honestly think Utah 1 would be the line that I would go to. Like, they've just been really, really good this year. 3.1 expected goals per 60, 3 actual goals per 60. Schmaltz and Keller play like 19, 20 minutes. They're reasonably cheap at 14,600. It is Demko and net, but Demko hasn't been good since he got back, right? 10 goals against in 3 starts. His best game was his last one out, that win against Colorado. He got lit up in his first 2 outings. Remember, it was a couple years ago. He had a pretty bad season when he was trying to play through an injury. We know he had a pretty serious injury, which is why he missed the first 2 months of the season with that knee problem. So maybe he's not quite the same goalie. Maybe he's finally been fine. Or finally getting to be fine, but I think it might be worth the risk of going to Utah 1. If you want to play Utah 2, because they're a little bit cheaper, they're more of a filler, you can play with like a Florida or a Winnipeg or something like that. I think that's fine. I have no issue with playing Utah 2, but I think Utah 1's just been the better line and they get more minutes. So it'd be Utah 1, Vancouver 1, Utah 2, Vancouver 3 for me out of this game.
Well, here's the Galaxy brain here at work while you're talking about it. You said JT Miller goes out 58% of his time on the road with Quinn Hughes. Utah dictates matchups, and teams often treat the Pettersson line as the top line. So if they send out that Hayton line against Pettersson, it's a fair shot that they're going to see them without the Quinn Hughes pairing on the ice.
Yeah, and even still, like, the Utah top line only, like, at most will like spend 50% of their shifts, even if they go out against Miller in top competition matchups. It'll be like 50%. Like, the other half of Miller's shifts will be against the depth.
Yeah. So I don't know what I was going to say there, but let's talk about defensemen. Is Connor a must in cash? I think he's one of the stronger cash options. I wouldn't declare him a must play, but he is pretty close to. He's pretty close, I would say. Just depends on your build. Depends what you want to do at the center position. I don't play too much cash, but when I usually spend up at center. But on this slate, if you have a lineup you like with Connor and cash, I think you go with it. On the blue line here at the top of the board, we have Quinn Hughes, Josh Morrissey, Travis Sanheim, Miro Heiskanen, and Moritz Seider. And we'll throw Sergachev into that mix. Honestly, don't mind Quinn Hughes here at 7,400. The issue that I'm running into is he would have to be in like a double mid-range stack build, because if you try to fit in Florida, you try to fit in Toronto, you try to fit in one of those expensive lines, you probably won't be able to fit Quinn Hughes. And he has been shooting less, which is a concern. But it is a good power play matchup, so don't mind him. Josh Morrissey is the top of my board again. He would be one for me in that spot against Anaheim. Like, Travis Sanheim's fine. Like, he plays a lot of minutes, but I don't particularly love it. Like, Sergachev is fine. Miro Heiskanen, I like, assuming that top line for Dallas is in. So they would be on the power play together, because this is a pretty good power play spot. Like, outside of Morrissey and maybe Heiskanen, I don't see myself spending up for defenseman here.
Yeah, Morrissey's the top of the stochastic projections here tonight for just total fantasy point projection. He's at the top of my board too. So Morrissey, I think, is number one. What I will say about Quinn Hughes is that if I'm playing the JT Miller line in a stack, I'm probably putting Hughes in with them, because they play so much together at 5-on-5, and obviously they play together on the power play. Hughes gets involved a lot. Like, I don't know if it's the best power play matchup, but Vancouver might get the most power plays of any team here tonight. So I do think that matters. So I really do like Hughes. Mid-price range, like, I think Moritz Seider makes sense. He always makes sense. Miro Heiskanen, like, with Matt Dumba hurt, if Harley and Lundqvist are both out, like, that's half the blue line gone. Like, Heiskanen is probably going to have to play a lot of minutes. So I really would like Heiskanen. I think Jared Spurgeon, perfectly fine. running the power play for Minnesota as well. For the cheap guys, for the reasons I like Heiskanen and the same reasons I like Esa Lindell, he'll probably have to play a lot of minutes if half the Dallas blue line is missing. Jackson Lacombe running the top power play for Anaheim. He's a cheap defenseman we've used quite a bit this year. I do like him again. Ben Sherratt, listen, you don't have to be a good NHL player to be a good DFS player.
And Jacob Trouba.
Yeah, I mean, you could add him to the list of people to use tonight. Like Ben Sherratt's getting like 21 minutes. It's not a bad matchup against Philly, and he does block and sometimes shoot the puck. So don't mind him. Tyler Myers will probably have to get minutes again for Vancouver. Mike Kesselring is a guy that I've been throwing in every once in a while. His price has come up a little bit, but he's a good offensive defenseman in what might not be a bad matchup if Demko's not on his game. If you're looking super cheap, Hayden Fleury's getting more minutes for Winnipeg. He's projecting well. Ilya Lyubushkin for the same reasons as Lindell and Heiskanen. He might have to get some minutes here tonight. Jake McCabe, as long as he's under 3K, he's still fine. Declan Chisholm, his ice time is obviously going down now that Brodin is back. But he's still getting like 18, 19 minutes. I think that's fine. And Brian Dumoulin is getting some reasonable minutes with Cam Fowler gone from Anaheim. So he's all right as well. But I think it would be Fleury, McCabe, or Lyubushkin for like the super cheap punts that I would really look to here tonight.
The one punt that I'll add, and he's just he holds a soft spot in my heart. He's 2,700. Carson Soucy, last 4 games have been 21 minutes or higher. Hasn't done a ton with them. He's kind of Mikey Andersoning them, but 2,700. You take what you can get. Let's talk about goalies here. This goalie slate sucks. Like, they all suck, but like this is exceptional levels of suck. Like, you have Comrie, Ottinger, Leon, Marc-Andre Fleury at the top. Like, I don't mind Ottinger. It's just like I want to know who is in and who is out, because if like Leon Bichelle is on the top pair again, like, I don't know, man. Like, I guess that makes Ottinger a decent GPP play, but like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want to spend up. Like, Comrie would probably projects well, but like, he's a pretty steep fall off from Hellebuck. I think Karel Vejmelka, King Carol, 7,800 makes some sense here. If you're not playing Vancouver, he has been good for Utah. I would imagine he gets traded at the deadline. I don't mind him. Like, Demko at 7,600 is the name value there. Like, that's fine. He is coming off a good game, so maybe he piggybacks off of it. If you really want to lean into the flow chart, Lucas Dostal at 7K makes some sense. I don't mind Wohl at 7,200 just from the fact that like Dallas could be a shell of themselves. We just don't know yet. So it would be Dostal or Wohl if I'm spending down. Probably Vejmelka in the mid-range, and if I had to spend up, it would probably be Ottinger. I guess Leon makes sense, but I just like, I have such bad negative bias towards him.
Yeah, we're in for one hell of a goalie slate when the top 3 projected goalies are Sergei Bobrovsky, Alex Leon, and Eric Comrie. It's like, oh boy. I will say I don't mind Leon here. He's been good this year. Detroit can give up shots. As I mentioned, Philly's power play has been abysmal at 5-on-4. Like, they've scored some goals at like 5-on-3 and 4-on-3 in overtime and stuff like that. But at 5-on-4, when they get most of their power plays, it's been bad. So like, Detroit doesn't give up, if Detroit doesn't fall apart on the PK against a bad power play, I think Leon could have a good night. Like, I think he's my favorite expensive goalie here. It's because like, I in a nutshell, I don't mind Ottinger, but Seguin's out. If they're missing a couple more forwards and then half their defensemen are gone, facing the Toronto Maple Leafs, like, I would have some concerns. So I think Karel Vejmelka would be my other expensive-ish goalie, but it would be Leon or then Vejmelka. For cheap, I honestly don't mind the cheap goalies here tonight. Joseph Woll, especially, given that it looks like Dallas could have not quite a few guys, but some key guys out tonight. I don't mind Wall for 7,200 on the road, and I don't mind Dostal for 7K at home. Like, Dostal can give up 4 goals here tonight and still put up like 20 DK points with the volume that he might see. So it'd be Leon, Vejmelka for the expensive guys, Dostal or Wall for the cheap guys. Whoever you use, just expect a negative score, and if you get a positive one, then just take it and run.
And if you're Frostback, I think -3 is a good score for you tonight. But, I mean, listen, goalies are so random. If there is one that you have a lean on, just play him, man. Like, just play him. Maybe you can play Kevin Lankin and take the 0 and win, but don't do that. Yeah, we just confused like 17 NBA guys. I'm like, really? No, but we will be back tomorrow. There is NFL and NBA tomorrow, so I'm sure the GPPs will go from great to whatever the opposite of great is, PG rated. But good luck, everybody, tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you Friday. We'll see you Saturday. Good luck, everybody. Hopefully we're talking about you to lead off the show tomorrow.
Not doing a hat trick pick? What's going on here?
Holy crap. What is happening to me? I am falling apart. The goalies got me twisted. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go Detroit. I'm going to go with the Bink Cat himself, Alex DeBrincat.
Man, I am so thrown off right now. That Hansel is so hot right now. Hansel. I don't even know what I want to do tonight. And it's kind of a chalky pick, and I hate it, but I'm going to go Matt Tkachuk.
Fine.
I mean, I don't hate it. Like, I like the pick. I normally go super spicy, but like super spicy on this slate is like Sam Steele, and I don't want to go there. So
fair enough. Yeah. We will be back tomorrow, Friday, Saturday. I guess I'll do the outro here today. For Josh, I'm Slim Cliffy. Good luck to everybody tonight. Hopefully somebody takes down that 888, and we'll see you tomorrow.
It's me.